someone just asked me that. And I have a relative named Tim, but you don't live in. Oh, it's a tough one. But my name's common. It is. It's like Smith in Italian.
Really?
Yeah. I only know because I got the tax report one time. It was like 3,000 of my name on it. Which is. It's good enough.
The police chief at UVA is Timothy Longo.
Oh, is that right?
Kind of.
Hey, he's always thinking.
He's always thinking. There's no doubt.
You never know. Could be a story, though.
But it's not.
Right.
Hey guys,
That one down there's a tough story right now. Puts it in perspective. So nice. All right, where do we go?
start with Drake. I mean, another huge game, and UNC's kind of kicked off this Heisman campaign now. Just wondering kind of your thoughts on that. Nothing really specific, but just another amazing game, and the fact that you're now coaching a Heisman candidate.
So Drake, really, you know, it's so interesting. He throws for 4 or something, hasn't turned the ball over in 3 weeks, right? And just made some really good decisions on the plays that he played well on, and he is. I'm excited. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm excited because there's about 8 plays in this game that if Drake and I can have those plays back, are, you know, could be impactful. You know, so there's 8 plays. Like, so even with as good as he's playing so good. He's making great decisions. And I always talk about being a good, consistent decision maker, and that's what he's done. He's been really, really consistent, and I think that's one of the reasons why when you make good decisions, you put yourself in a good position to make plays. And so we're making good decisions fairly consistently and very, very efficiently right now. So when you do that, then it puts you on a better stage, really, just to show what you can do athletically. You know, and I say to a lot of the guys at all the positions, like, you're recruited here. These guys are recruited here because we think they have the athletic ability to actually go excel and perform at their position. And really the thing that gets them away from that or gets them out of that is when we don't make good decisions, or, you know, either we don't scheme it well, or receivers aren't making good decisions on routes, quarterbacks aren't making good decisions on plays, running backs aren't making good decisions on cuts. When we're smart, when we play smart football, then that's when your athleticism has the best shot at, you know, at being in the spotlight. And so with Drake, I think right now, as athletic as he is and as gifted as he is as a passer and as gifted as he is as a runner, he's just giving himself such a great opportunity to excel on most of the plays that he's in because he's making great decisions. And that's the part that you don't see when you're watching, you know, in the stands. You have no idea that he's going here instead of there, or he's checking this instead of that. From protection to run checks to progression, all that stuff. I mean, he's really in a good place right now.
I imagine the plays you like to get back, the 2 throwaways in the red zone late in the game. What did you see on those plays that you would like to go back and change?
Well, actually, they did a good job of covering, right? And one, we don't ever want to endanger the football. I mean, there's a reason he's thrown 3 interceptions, because we're not going to force the ball in when, particularly in situations where you want to make sure you ensure, at the very least, staying within range for your field goal kicker. So we'd like to have the sack back that we gave, you know, down there on the first down. And, you know, the throwaway on 3rd down, I didn't actually think was a bad decision because we didn't want a chance holding the ball. Everything was covered. He got through the progression. There was nothing there. Didn't have a lane to run. And so what you don't want to do at that point is make the go-ahead field goal kick longer and more difficult. And so I actually was happy with that decision. I thought we could have started that drive off better on 1st down just by getting rid of the ball.
Is there a common thread between those 8 snaps that you'd like to have back?
No, and usually there never is. There's anywhere from a half dozen, 6, 7, 8 every week, and some of them are very minor. You know, like there's a couple plays where he flipped a complete out to maybe the second look in the progression, and maybe the first one, the one where we could have triggered quicker. You know, and then sometimes you're splitting hairs too. You know, it's really easy for me to make declarations about plays when I'm standing over on the sideline and I'm just calling it. It's different when you're standing there under pressure behind the offensive line and you get a flash of another color on that first route, and it's easy for me to say, hey, I think you should have thrown that. So really what happens when we look at those plays is we discuss it. We don't, it's not like, hey, Drake, you're wrong here. I'm marking you off because we needed to make this throw. I said, look, what are you thinking here? I thought you could have made this. He said, you know what, Coach, I was gonna, but I saw the corner triggering and I just didn't want to endanger the ball, so I went to the second look. And that's where, because football is not black and white all the time. There's a lot of gray area in football, and I want players to trust their instincts. And that's why we spend so much time probably running fewer plays more often so that they get really good and instinctive about making those decisions in practice. And that's why all our quarterbacks rep, even behind the quarterback in all these plays, because you can coach all 5 of them at the same time when you're watching film, because you can see what they're doing with their feet and where they go throw it, and you know what decisions they're making. And so that's another reason why, this goes back to our conversation last week, but when you spend so much one-on-one time in meetings and you're discussing things, you start to get a feel for, how does Drake May see this? How does Jacoby Criswell see this? How did Sam Howell see this play? Because they're not all the same. And then, you work it out so that we're all on the same page and you kind of get what you expect. But so in those 8 plays, there's probably 4 of them are really more just plays worth discussing and having a conversation and maybe running a different route in that scenario or against that coverage the next time. So it's not so gray, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, because you have 10 games of intel now and he's played at such a high level,
That's good
do you
stuff.
grade him a little bit differently now than you did back in September?
Do I what differently?
Do you grade him a little bit different? Is there like a grading curve where it's actually escalated, it's gone up now?
No, if anything, I think I try to grade more critically because early on I'm going to be aware that this is a rookie, he hasn't been in this scenario. But I think as I know that, and I always say this like in the offense with our guys in the quarterback room, as soon as I think they've mastered a play, I kind of take it off my play sheet and put it on theirs. And that's becomes something they can check to, or it becomes something that I know I can call this anytime, and he has full control, full understanding of this play, and he's going to put the ball in a good area. He's going to make good decisions on this play. When I don't move it over, I just think, we're not quite ready yet to run this thing without schematic help or something. And so I want to get to a point where they master them all and the play sheet becomes their own. Like right now, if I went into the game and we had to play Jacoby Criswell, the play sheet wouldn't change because they both understand the offense the same way. If it was Connor Harrell, the play sheet would be much smaller. And that's not because he's not as bright. He's a valedictorian, but he just hasn't the experience, nor has he had the time here to understand the offense the same way. So he has far fewer plays on his playlist that he's mastered that belong to him just because of, the lack of experience. But that's the process, I guess, is what I'm sharing.
Bill, can you kind of give us a little bit more insight into Drake's development in terms of what we've seen on the film, on the field, looks pretty much like a polished product. And, a lot of times with kids, you'll be able to see them grow on the field, but it almost seems like he was like instamatic. Was he at the point where he could make some of these progressions, through a play when you first got him, when he first, came?
Well, he is very different than Sam in a lot of ways, but very similar to Sam with regards to having the ability to learn a play and then be able to regurgitate it and put it up on the board and explain it and draw it out and understand it. And, over the years working with all these different quarterbacks that obviously I'm going to have the fortunate opportunity to work with in 34 years of doing this, it's amazing how many intelligent players can understand the stuff on the board. It's far fewer that can take that understanding and apply it on the field at the speed of the game. And that's really, and I have no idea what the numbers are, but I would guess half the guys I've coached that didn't start or didn't play probably struggled most with that. They understood the game, they were smart to get that done. Maybe didn't make the decisions quick enough at the speed of the game to really excel at the position. because it didn't translate the same way. With people like Sam Howell and Drake, you put a play in, I don't even have to tell them a progression, and they automatically can assume what it is most of the time because of the way we approach it. And so when we put stuff in, sometimes wrinkles and say, how would you progress through this? How are you gonna read this? And most of them would say, just because we're speaking the same language all the time in that room, they would understand. And then I'll go out and say, well, look, we're gonna do it that way. And here's the priority, and this is what we're looking for. Because the philosophy is the same, and they understand what the approach is. And so Drake is exceptional at looking at a play, learning the progression, understanding how to protect it, understanding when he can run off it and when he can't, understanding versus numerous different coverages, where he may want to spray the football or start the progression. And that's why he's got so many of those plays. So to answer your question, he did. He got really good at a lot of them early on, and we have been building on his own personal playlist the whole season, to the point now where I don't know if I'm concerned about calling much while he's out there from a mental understanding. And how fast the stuff on the board and on film translates on the field with Drake it's special, and that's why he's playing some good football right now.
Are you hearing from NFL scouts at all?
Yeah, we have scouts every single day of practice.
What are they saying to you
Every
about
day.
Drake?
And the good thing is they're there looking at a bunch of players. Obviously, Drake is one of the key guys they're looking at. There's a few that I think would pick him right now, is what they said, in the first round. So that is interesting to hear. I think I'm really glad that he'll be back again next year. So, and we have these rules where they can't leave until after a certain time. But it doesn't surprise me that they like him because of the way he's playing. And what I really like more so than the interest that he's getting is how humble and focused he stays. We said, look, all of the things that Drake does well, we put on a list. And then all of the things that have come into his world since he started playing well. Media attention, accolades, all draft interest, NFL interest, all the, NIL, whatever it is, all the things that were not there in the spring that exist there now. The reminder was, look, this is what created all that stuff. And that stuff's going to come if we keep playing well. So the focus has to be on the stuff on the list that got him here in the first place. His preparation, his ability to, his durability and his athleticism, and the focus and the attention he puts in on being a good quarterback and being able to execute the offense. And I think he has, without any real issue at all, has handled understanding what the priorities are. And as soon as you start looking at all that other stuff, and human beings do that. We're all guilty of doing that sometimes. And I think he has done a phenomenal job of staying focused on what's important, and that is getting prepared to go execute on Saturday, and that's why he's been so consistent.
Have the scouts mentioned, obviously Dallas and Green are on discussion too. What have they said about
Yeah, we got some special talent here and there. I'd say there's probably 5, 6, 7 guys. I don't know them all. They asked me about Drake and Antoine and Josh and Austin Richards, and I don't know who they're looking at on defense because they don't ask me. I'm on the offensive side, but those have been the guys that they've asked about the most, I'd say, this year.
You speak, obviously Drake's the top, Josh is the top, the skill guys are the top, but how much has the offensive line's improvement or sort of consistency this year helped those guys do what they do?
In the run game, I think we always feel like we want to be more physical in the run game. And they'll hear a lot from Vic now this week with regards to playing with low pad level, because that helps with physicality and finishing. I'm always talking about finishing, I think, at all positions, but particularly on the O-line. We haven't done a bad job, but I think we could finish a little better, we could be more physical. In the past game, I've been very, very pleased. The sack numbers are cut in half at this point from where they were last year. But really and truthfully, they're better than that because 4 of our sacks have been credited to tackle draws. Right? They're draw plays that we just didn't beat the line of scrimmage, so they were credited to sacks, which weren't. And then we've had far fewer quarterback hurries. We've had far fewer batted balls. We've had far fewer plays where the quarterback had to reset or burst, meaning move and throw off platform, than we did last year. So outside of just the sack numbers, the other things have, that pocket has been much calmer. It's been deeper, meaning the guard, center guard done a good job of resetting the line of scrimmage after the snap, further away from the quarterback. We've created more width with our DNs, with the offensive tackles. So there's been a lot more space. And that in alone, if a play is covered, just provides more visual passing lanes and more, space for running lanes if, in fact, Drake has to leave. So that whole world in the pass protection game has improved immensely, and I think it's a big part of why we've been successful this year.
Phil, Josh, obviously the stuff he's doing and the way he's doing it, it just jumps off the page with the numbers and the production and everything. But he gets the cramps the other night, and goes in, gets the IV, and then I don't think he missed a series when he came back.
Yeah.
The toughness that he's showing, and I guess maybe the determination, just like what have you seen from him, just in that regard? Maybe more so than, catching the balls and scoring the touchdowns and counting them out and all that.
Well, if you looked at him physically when he got here, he was in really good shape and he had a good physique and all that. And you look at him now, and there's a considerable difference. He's done an exceptional job of developing himself physically. He's a lot stronger than you might think he is, a lot stronger. And obviously we know he's explosive, but he's also been very durable, and you think a kid that isn't, he's not as big as Antoine, right? And so you think maybe some of those guys, you always concern yourself about their durability, and he has not had any issues. And so mental toughness has never been a question. And I don't know anyone between the whistles when the play starts that he doesn't compete as hard as. He competes hard now when he's out there. And I think he's a very mentally tough kid. And I think he's physical. And so it doesn't surprise me. He's a special talent. It's getting increasingly more difficult to try to find ways to get him the football. We've been able to do that this season. We got him 101 last year. As coach said, well, heck, we get him 15, let's get him 30, right? So when you have a guy like that, you want to make sure that we're going to drain every drop of blood out of him before he's done here that we possibly can.
Mac was saying, if I can follow up on that.
Sure. Hey, sure.
Mac was saying that one of the missions was, after he caught the 101 balls last year, to try to move him around, to try to find creative ways where he doesn't tail off. He felt like maybe it sort of tailed off toward the end of last season, or people just focused on him so much.
Well, even last year, we had to put him in wide out. We had to put him in the backfield. We had to motion him. We had to stack him. We had to do those things because I don't know if we did not have the same number of prolific skilled kids, at the receiver position last year. And some of those names and players are the same, but they're just a year better, and we're in a better place right now at that position. So we had to be really creative to try to get Josh the ball last year, and it's getting more difficult now because people are, again, going back to, see, in the beginning of this year, it was, well, do we focus in on Josh Downs, and they're giving up plays to all these other receivers and to the tight ends who are a bigger part of the attack. But now, because Josh has been so productive and so prolific in the offense, particularly the last 3-4 weeks, I think he's starting to draw more attention, and it's starting to feel more like last year. And it won't surprise me if some of our other guys have some big games if, in fact, they're going to spend, play after play with 2 defenders on Josh. So he's going to help us regardless. He's either going to create other matchups or he's going to continue winning his own. And in either facet, it's going to be good for us.
And to build on that, probably already answer some of this, but how does he change your play call when he can get open so easily and one-on-one? It's almost like a given.
Anytime you have better players, it makes play calling easier. So, but I think I always look at it like worst case scenario. I always look at the defenses if they're as good as they can be. I always look at the scheme as if they're going to be where they're going to be all the time. So you plan for the worst, and then when it doesn't work out that way, guys like Josh make an 8-yard play, and they turn that into a 30-yard play, and it helps everybody. I don't know if that answers your question, but it doesn't change the play calling necessarily because that's schematic in nature, unless our play is just about matchups. You know what I mean? And if it's that, then we're motion scheming, formationing just to create a matchup with Josh or Antoine or Bryson or you know, whoever on this particular individual because it's a weakness that we want to attack. And then you let Josh go do his thing. You know, I always say I don't want to ever coach a running back on that side of the line of scrimmage. You want to let them do what they do well. That's why you recruited them. And once the receivers understand the offense, you want to let them go. And it's our job to find situations where we can get them into one-on-one matchups. And that has gotten harder with downs, but nothing's impossible.
Are there any players standing out on Tex D numbers?
Any player standing out on what?
Georgia Tech's
Oh, here
defense?
we go.
Special article he does every week.
Yeah, there actually are. There's some really good ball players. Number 6, in my opinion, is their best football player. He's really, really good. Other than that, that's all I'm going to give you today. I'm worried about him. He's the scheme changer. Okay, they are similar a little bit to what we saw last week in that they're going to play 4 down. They play their 4 down a little differently than last week, but we're going to see more of mint. Again, you're going to see double 4 eyes. And so that's an issue we have to handle. Coverage-wise, they're multiple. I think we're going to get more man coverage this week than we did last week. Their corners are very good. They're long, they're physical, they're rangy. You know, we played a couple teams with a good duo of corners the last few weeks, and this team's no different. I think you can underestimate this defense. You know, there are 5 or 6 guys out there that I think can play here, and I think they're a headache schematically. They're a huge pressure team, so we're going to see pressure, numerous different types of pressure, both with man and zone behind it, out of both fronts. You know, again, it's going to be more about Drake being able to ID protection and get rid of the football against this team. And then probably the biggest charge this week is that we're able to run the football more effectively than we have in the last couple of weeks.
So Mac was saying that when he looked at the score for the Georgia Tech game last year this morning, he said he could throw up just to have that same effect on you when you think back to what happened in that game.
So I think there's 2 games here that I absolutely don't like to watch. 2019 versus Wake Forest was the worst football game that we played here since I've been here, and last year against Georgia Tech. And so I am going to watch Georgia Tech. I think there's a lot of not overlap necessarily schematically, but just with regards to who we played. There's a lot of guys that were in the rotation that played last year that are now in the starting lineup, and then there are also a lot of new faces with Georgia Tech. And then you have to take into account there was a head coaching change. And there weren't drastic differences made after that change, but there were some subtle changes made that, you want to take note of. But this also isn't last year's team. And so, you always go back and watch the most recent game against the opponent that you have, but our focus will be on what Georgia Tech is doing now and who we're playing against. And that's what we spent all day game planning.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
All right, guys, see you.